Raise the Standard Podcast. Because the standard you set shapes the life you build.
Hey, aloha, everybody. Welcome to Raise the Standard Podcast. We didn't have one last week because we just had some things going on and we couldn't get it done, but we're excited to be back on air with you guys, and we hope you enjoy the conversation today. Of course, you know my partner in crime, Coach Steve Richards. And by the way, Coach Richards has been enjoying this major move from house to house. Only been here for not even, right at a year, and they're moving again. So anyway, Steve, how'd the move go?
Oh my God. Like, I'm selling everything next time. It's just going. It's going to be a big yard sale. Come and get for free.
Yeah, man, I was shocked, Steve, when you told me you guys were right in the middle of the move a week or two ago. I just told my wife, Cindy, what the heck are they doing? They just moved here a year ago, and they're moving, 3 or 4 or 5 miles away from where they just moved to. So
that was the best part about it, 3 or 4 or 5 miles away.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad everything's gone well, and I'm glad you're all settled now, and hopefully you won't be moving for a while, yeah?
Yeah, I think I'm a lot stronger, a lot fitter, sweat a few pounds off.
I'll tell you, go ahead. But I'll tell you what, we've got a great guest today, and one of Steve's former colleagues up at Washington State. So, Steve, go ahead and introduce Jerry, and let's get this thing going.
Yeah, I'm glad to finally pin Jerry down and get him on here. You know, I thought I was busy, but Jerry's up and moving all the time, and it's like trying to get hold to Santa Claus. You can only get hold of him once a year. But Jerry's a longtime friend from when I was in Washington State, and I met Jerry when he was on the board at it was called PSPL, then the Puget Premier League, where I was lucky enough to become the director of the state for the academy. And Jerry, welcome aboard. Could you just give us a little spiel on your journey and how you got where you've got now and what you do?
Yeah. So I am the club development director for Washington East Surf. We have an executive team that runs the club, and it's a incredible club. We've got about 2,700 players, so it's unreal. And other things that I do outside of that, I am part of the WPL board, which is the former PSPL. I am one of the board members at large, and then outside of that, I have a company that puts players on to the next level. It's called Global Soccer Network. We do that as well. And then I have a third company that is a touchline management. So we actually manage different soccer clubs and help them get from point A to point B. A few things.
Got your plate full, yeah?
Yes, for sure. I think when you're doing soccer, I think you have to be well-rounded. And like Steve has realized, one thing leads to another, and it's just again, it's who knows who, and especially in the soccer world. And it's amazing. It's a small, big soccer world, but it's huge.
What kind of changes have you seen in the soccer industry here in the States that is maybe much more different now than it was, let's just say 15, 20 years ago?
Yeah, I think the collaboration, right? You're starting to see a lot more of that with clubs and with even leagues, for that matter. Seattle is prime part of it as well. I think you see people actually trying to work together, which, as Steve knows and I knows, we've been around a while, and that never happened before. It was mine, and they never would be willing to work together. That's one piece right there. On the college piece, I mean, obviously with the N1, with fifth year seniors, I mean, it goes on and on and on, right? You got the men's doing fall and spring now, so I mean, it's going to change the game tremendously. Probably for the better in the long run. I think it's going to take everyone a little bit to get used to it. I think the signing days and being able to put players on, we have a smaller window for sure because of those fifth year seniors. So yeah, it's a lot of different changes for sure.
Yeah. Steve, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, obviously with us here on the island, my team won states, so we got pretty advanced program. But the problem is we have with the new N1 program is we're going to be playing the same teams we were playing in the other league, right? They've just put another name on it, and for us to leave the island, it's 6 hours wherever we go, So it's a great concept, but we're debating here at the moment on is it worth our players for the development aspect of it and the identification aspect of it, because obviously with my 30-40 years experience and everybody else, we can identify our players and actually pick up the phone and introduce players, so it's a great concept for on the mainland, but we're kind of juggling around at the moment to see if it's worth it for us.
Yeah, and that travel we talked about earlier, Steve, before Jerry came on, that could be a deal breaker, because like you say, we're 6 hours away from the mainland. That you're talking about a big financial burden to people based on their situation.
I think if it's explained a little bit better what could happen behind the scenes, where okay, it's not only about the playing and the X's and O's. What's the backroom staff can do for our players, or the players who are competing in N1. As Jerry mentioned before, we've been around a while, and our connections is all referrals rather than a mass emailing list that goes out to people, and that's a big difference, when you do the introductions to a mass mailing product,
Jerry, one of the things that Steve and I talk about all the time, and the reason we named this podcast Raise the Standard, is because the standard is the standard in our current culture right now, not just in the U.S., but around the world. Sometimes standards can just kind of be, in some cases, people negotiate with standards, and you should never negotiate with standards. Standard is the standard. So what have you seen, with your current situation and maybe over the last number of years with how you're trying to get clubs, players, teams, coaches to continue elevating their standard instead of just perhaps settling for a mindset of mediocrity?
And the biggest thing, and like Steve is prime example of what a person can do, right? So, you could, it's more or less working your business, right? A lot of the times you can set your standard, but then you got to work it, right? So we had affiliates in different locations. Obviously, we're not there on a day-to-day basis. Our furthest one away is about 3.5 hours, and so to be able to keep that standard that we do up in Spokane, Washington, it makes it really, really tough, right? So the biggest part is making sure that they have the base, and then they have to work it on a weekly basis. So it's whether they're making phone calls to um, for advertising, where they're making scholarship stuff, or are they working with another community member, right? It's one of those things where I think it's it's easier said than done, right? Because you have to get on the phone, you have to make those phone calls, you have to, do it when it's not convenient, right? And it's never convenient when you're doing soccer and any business for that matter. But to be able to keep the standard and make and raise it and make it better for the following season or the following year or whatever that might look like, it's tough. It's tough, but you can be done. It can be done for sure.
Well, Jerry, obviously we've been around the block a few times, right?
Yeah.
What was the attraction to surf? What attracted you to jump in with 2 feet with surf, and what's the identity of surf for players going on to the next level? So
Yeah. So
what would I be as a DOC, the advantage of coming in with you, and what did you believe in that got you on this journey?
Yeah, obviously their motto is best of the best of experiences and opportunities, right? So that is their big model. The underlining model is teach players to love the game, right? And so that's kind of been one of those things that they've kind of held since as long as I've known them, and since 2017 when we joined. So the biggest part we're bringing it up in our area. There wasn't anything like that. And so when we first got in, there was no national brand. People were connected with MLS uh, uh, clubs, but there was nothing that they were getting from it, right? You might have had one player in 5 years be identified, but outside of that, that's all they were getting, right? And so we wanted to change the model up in our area. That was kind of the original plan for myself and to bring the clubs along. And then I also, at the time, I had two other areas not close to us that were also looking to kind of make a jump somewhere somehow. After the 98-page application went in at the time. Again, this is a long time ago, so they have it down. They've slimmed it since then, but it was a process to get in for sure. Because they didn't know me, and we're up in Spokane, which we're closer to Canada than we are the United States sometimes, right? And so hockey should be our number one sport versus soccer, which is kind of one of those fun things. But essentially, we bring it, and then obviously being part of it, once we got in, it did open up a lot of avenues. We were able to get into ID camps. We were able to get into showcase events at the time that we weren't able to do before. The affiliate program at Surf has changed tremendously from when it started. Obviously, like anything else, it grows, gets better, gets bigger, and they just add more services, right? And so basically, everything's at your fingertips if you want to use it. You don't have to use it, but they do have it available. So they have, I don't know, probably about 18 to 20 items that you can use. Primarily for us, we do use some of the services, but for me myself, I use it for the collaboration with the other 62 affiliates that are in the program. And again, that allows us to talk to players, help players out, go to additional ID camps that we weren't able to get into before, showcase events, and also the guest playing opportunities, which, everyone always says, hey, you can play with your own team local, which is great, but your team may not be in a platform, right? So that player or person might have to um, take a guest playing opportunity with an ECNL group down in California or wherever, and go to a showcase event that their team or club is not involved in. So yeah, a lot of different avenues like that, but it works well.
So I mean, looking at, obviously you believe in it, and everything, like we discussed earlier about what the show is all about is standards. What standards do you look for, or level of coaching within a club that would fit your model? And if they do come in with the standards and they don't reach the standards, what's your process? What do you do?
Yeah, so we have a set I don't know, 13 to 15 point uh, that we go off of, right? And this is what we believe in. Obviously, we do plenty of meetings prior to talking or meeting with that coach or director for that matter to see if they fit that model. A lot of it is are you there for the kids or are you there for yourself? Right? I mean, that's one of the biggest ones. And then we ask simple questions. Do you like soccer? Do you love soccer? Are you here for a few years to build a resume? Or are you here to just move on? Right. So it's a bunch of different things on that for sure. But we definitely have a bar that we set. Like I said, it was about 15 items that we ask um, with directors and coaches for that matter, and then. Does it fit what we feel is what we have currently already? So does it feel genuine? Does it feel like you're going to help us raise what we have already, plus also provide opportunities in that area?
Does it make a difference what qualifications the DOC has? Because obviously, some of the small clubs, the DOC is a one-man band,
Correct.
and I know, obviously, being involved with the surf anyway with the academy when I was there, they offer a lot of coaching education platforms and that,
They do.
but which I think is the first step that grows the club anyway, because it translates then to the players and the parents. But uh, how do you go about if I'm a DOC with just a D license, the dangerous D? How would you be able to help? Obviously me, and then you explained about the club, but how would I proceed within surf as a director of my club?
Yeah, so obviously within that, right, we find different opportunities for that particular director or coach to go take advantage of, whether that be the next license, which would be the C or whatever they have at the time, a director of coaching license as well. That's kind of a prerequisite for us. They have to have that within the first year. And again, as you know, and I know, Steve, they don't offer those classes all the time like they used to back in the day. So you have to go out and find them. So I think it's one of those things where you set the expectation, they understand what it is. We do help them a little bit financially to be able to get through those things, which is obviously not always easy when you have a large club, but it's one of those things where you still got to put money into them to be able for them to succeed, right? You got to give them the tools, and I think that's the bigger piece is you give them the tools, show them where it's at, what's available. And again, it's one of those things. Or Stephen, you know this, man. It's creating those partnerships with yourself that can bring up something different, right? They can bring something from a UEFA, something that's from the other side of the world, right? And bring a coaching education that way. So again, those opportunities, right? You just got to be able to, as you said and I said, right? You got to have those handshake and phone calls where you can just pick up a phone and talk to a guy you haven't talked in a while. So to be able to bring
Well,
those educational pieces.
You got to believe in it.
You do.
I mean, you can't really sell anything or deliver anything if you don't believe in it.
Correct.
And sometimes you have those tough conversations, and it has to be a belief, and it has to go along with your own principles. I mean, it's funny because I just sat with a group the other day here on the island, a big private school organization, and the first question they asked was, "Why us?" And I
Fair
said,
enough.
well, I think you guys met my high standards. You kind of got high standards like I got high standards. You're not gonna persuade me otherwise when it's my principles. So we started on the front foot and we went sparring from there.
That's what you call it. I love it. I love it. That's good.
Yeah. Bill,
Yeah.
obviously, it's been a while since you've coached the eye level in college and that. What do you see the difference in the big franchises? Because obviously you got Surf, you got Rush, you got Albion, you got all the other big clubs. What did you notice when you was recruiting back in the day? The difference is there a difference in the player? Because obviously the player is a product of your delivery. Is it a different in players, or did you see a difference or development or one from the other?
Yeah. By the way, update here. France is up 2-1 now with 27 minutes gone. Just so you know. Okay.
Oh,
Nice.
thanks. Nicely paying attention.
Yeah. But my focus is right here, guys. My focus is right here. I promise.
Yeah.
You know what? I mean, back then, and Jerry, I was lucky enough to be head coach at Mississippi State University, started that program, and head coach at William Carey University and started that program. So I was just really lucky, in the right place, right time, had good players. It was never about me. But in the recruiting process, which I really loved, I think it was, there may be some similarities now and then, but it's a lot more, I think recruiting at the college level, based on the conversations I have with still many of my good friends that are still in the industry, it's a lot more advanced now than it was, back then. I recruited heavily out of California and out of Texas in particular, the Dallas area specifically. I always thought that the players, I wanted to get to know the coach, the director of coaching, because I always felt like the players were in many ways a direct reflection of those coaches, their habits, their work rate, all those kind of things. So we as a coaching staff tried to identify what are some things about these coaches that may tell us how their players may be and how that will translate into what we want to try to accomplish, within our program. So one thing I didn't enjoy about the recruiting process was how political it is, right? And Jerry, maybe you can address this along with Steve, but a lot of times you weren't even allowed to really, the director of coaches and the different programs, clubs. I mean, there was a lot of gatekeepers, and I never really liked that because I want to talk to the kid, I want to talk to the parent. So, has that changed much, Jerry, in that regards?
You always have that face to face, right? I think that's a big piece of it as well. And I think that having those relationships with the coaches, right, it helps the introductions with like myself directly to them. I think that all starts the process. I think, you know, it's a tough, as you know, it's probably gotten tougher now because so many schools have changed levels, right? And now they've made these conferences bigger, right? And then the competition's there, right? The fifth year senior is brutal, right? I mean, that really kills those freshmen for sure. You're almost better off taking either a gap year or working yourself into a CC or a JUCO of some sort, and then being able to be that older player, right? Everyone's talking about, right? It's nice to work with an older player because they already know what it's like to be in college, right? And to be able to do school and all that stuff without having to go through that initial, oh my God, this is a craziness, right? With school and soccer, right? And so obviously there's still students that can do it for sure. But I think, I mean, that's a tough question. I don't know, Steve, what do you think?
I think I mean, it's tough all around. It's stressful more than anything for the players, and what most parents do, they don't want to invest in it early. They think it's too early to invest in it, right? And by the time they're a junior or a senior, as we all know, D1s are 2 years ahead of their recruiting path. So that by the junior and senior, you're not going to the school you want to go to unless you've done your homework and legwork, because we implement a college program as well that we start when they're actually, like, we've just had our 2012s come on an introductional program, just to get the parents' feet wet a little bit, but we explain to them it's like a job interview. You got to do the research and you got to do the legwork yourself, right? And what tends to happen, they rely on the coach to do it for them or the DOC to do it for them, and it's not going to work. Yeah, because you got to do it yourself. It's like the analogy I always say: if you're a caveman, you got to eat today. Are you going to rely on someone else to catch the food, or are you going to catch it yourself? Yeah, you're going to catch it yourself. So the funny we're talking about this because Jerry's got a daughter that plays as well, and I'm going to flip this right around with his parents' head on now. How did you find it with your daughter coming through the programs to get identified in college? And obviously, I know what your daughter did, but what made you come to that decision?
The biggest part is, as you know and I know, right, is having different coaches, different styles, and obviously you being one of them down way back in the day. I think having the being well rounded as you're getting into the college game, and then even after the college game, you're going to have a lot of coaches, and you're going to have coaches that are that like your style of play. You're going to have coaches that are going to try to fit your style of play into their system. Sometimes you get the good coaches, as Bill knows, you'll get the good coaches that will do the opposite, right? This is what I have, this is what I'm going to work with, and I'll fit around it, right? And so I think with Megan doing all the different academies, getting herself well rounded, having those opportunities over in the UK, Portugal and Spain now, and now over in Seattle. So I mean, she's really have seen a lot and a lot of different styles of play, and knows what she likes, doesn't know what she likes. But like you said, those academies are crucial in those middle school to, I guess, late elementary school opportunities, because I think having a player that cannot have their friends there, essentially to be able to play and not rely on, I guess, so to speak, with that coach that they may like for 4 or 5 years, right? It's good. And again, do I dare say this? But I'm having some English guys. It was helpful. You had some English coaches, and they were all different, but they helped her. So I mean, plain and simple.
I mean, it goes back to, again, what I always say: players are got it's not look to get recruited, but look at getting developed to play in the environment they're going to be playing in.
Correct.
And I'm a big believer in you got to train for the environment. And what a lot of people do here, they train for a scholarship or to be recruited, and that's not the way to go, to be honest with you. Because your daughter, I mean, I remember that one conversation vividly at one of our ID camps in Seattle, and I pulled her aside in the middle of a game, and I said, "Do you really want to be here? Right? Just because your dad's involved doesn't mean you need to be involved, because at the moment you're not shining." And she looked at me like a deer in headlights, and I'm not sure if anybody spoke to her like that before, but it was a crucial time for her.
Well,
And she went back in there and she proved a point. I think she slotted one in too. She scored.
shortly thereafter, yeah, no,
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. And I mean, to be honest with you, the pay to play model, which I've said before, kind of hurts a little bit, because you cannot be brutally honest. You have to kind of sugarcoat it a little bit.
You do, you do.
So let, let me tack on to this. And by the way, it's France 3-1 now over Norway with 35 minutes gone. So just keeping you involved. So let me ask you, both you guys, this. Just a couple of weeks ago, I remember mentioning this to Steve. One of my really good friends, who's head coach at a Power 5 school, he mentioned to me that that week or that particular day, there was like over 2,500 female athletes, soccer players, in the portal. And so I was asking him questions about what's going on with this. What is the whole idea about, Steve? We may have lost you. I'm not sure. Steve, he'll be back in a second, perhaps. But Jerry,
Yep.
what is with the kids? Everybody wants the pie in the sky, Division I. That's the dream.
Correct.
It's kind of the whole idea. And it seems like there's a lot of kids, and this, not that this is even new, but the portal's revealing a lot of this. Kids go to a particular school, perhaps Division I, and they realize it's just not a good fit. And so they're jumping from school to school to school. But what would you recommend to parents and to athletes who are going to be listening to this podcast, about making their choices, their wise decisions about what may be a best fit, instead of, oh my gosh, I have to play Division I? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mean, we obviously get a ton of that every year, right? Hey, I think I'm a D1 player, an opportunity. The biggest part, is not only taking that opportunity to talk to them at a showcase or an ID camp, but making that visit. Also asking the right questions, and being able to let that player know, you know, here's a list of questions you probably need to ask when you're on campus, right? As you're visiting, what's it look like for, how many do you have in my position? Do you see me being in your program? Um, Whether that be it, and I mean, obviously they're never going to tell you you're going to be a bench player, but who am I going to have to play against, or to get that position, right? And those are fair enough questions to ask nowadays. I think before, as you know, players weren't asking those questions, right? They were excited just to be found, in most cases. So nowadays the players are a lot smarter, right? And it makes it. I think you got to prep them. I think the right prepping for them, right prepping for parents, to make a logical decision about where they should go is huge. If they're a Power Five, great, or if they're just a mid major, right? I call a lot of them mid majors now, because if you don't have those NLI money, you're considered a mid major. I mean, it's not even a thought, right, anymore, because those ones, they get a lot of the star studded players for sure. Um, but that, and I think it's just the prepping, right? Prepping those players, letting them know, there's options, right? Not only there, and or is, what does those options look like? And can you make them fit in a certain way? So I think our again, we do have a college prep program for our club, but then I also help on the other end of it with some of my other companies to also uh, bring that information into them so they can make a logical decision. And again, having those tough conversations with those coaches is not easy, especially when you're dealing with the D1, because they got a list of 15, 12 players on their power board. We're like, all right, if this one says no, we're going to this one. And so they do have the upper hand, but I also think you can have some direct questions versus before. I don't think you did have that opportunity. I think now players more knowledgeable. You have podcasts like this. You have people like myself and Steve that can help teach that player and what to do.
Yeah. One of the questions when I have parents contact me, and believe it or not, it's not like it's every day, but it's every week for sure. Parents will reach out to me, and they'll kind of want to, find out from me and the connections I may have, just how do they go about the recruiting process? And I tell them a lot of things, but one of the major things I say is, have your kid, male or female, if soccer wasn't part of their life, would they still be looking at this school, right? The academics, the social, the environment, take soccer out of it. And then would they still choose that school? What about that philosophy, Jerry?
No, I think it's perfect. I think you hit it right on the nose. Like, are you still going to want to be there 4 years later, right? Essentially, that's because it's a 4-year degree, right? If not just your master's degree nowadays, but still, it's kind of one of those things where that is a perfect philosophy and a perfect way to acknowledge to that player that, yeah, you are, you got to see yourself outside of that soccer realm, right? Because Steve, and I know, you get hurt and you're sitting out for one season. And you got to know if you love that school. You really, really do. But no, I love that philosophy, Bill. That's perfect. Perfect philosophy for sure.
Steve, what are your thoughts on that?
Again, it goes back to mindset and doing your homework prior to getting in there. I mean, as a freshman going into a big program, you got to know that you're not going to touch the field at all, probably. With these big programs, and they're carrying 30 some odd players. Obviously now D1 can carry 28, but I mean, you go to a D2 program or NIA program, you're competing every day on the training field against 30 players. If you're a goalkeeper and they're 5 deep, 4 deep as a goalkeeper, you got to have a mindset that you got to train 100% every time you play, and when your opportunity comes to go for it, and I don't think the players are mentally strong enough today to get that concept, because the instant gratification that have been instilled into them from day one is going to come and bite them in the ass, but again, don't pick the school because of the coach, pick the school because of the school and what you want out of the school. You're a student first, you're an athlete second. We say that to my son all the time now with baseball. If your grades start slipping, you're not an athlete no more because you're not going to be playing.
True.
So creating a mindset and a hunger for what they want. I mean, I know me growing up, I missed everything in high school growing up because I was always training or traveling, but guess what? It's what I wanted at the end. I can't do everything, which most American players want to do. They want to do basketball, they want to do soccer, they want to do band, they want to do something else. I mean, when you're coming into your junior year, you got to zone in on what you want to do for the next 4 or 5 years, and hopefully past that. So again, I think it's the mindset. You've got to get the kids in that mindset and develop them for the situations.
I remember
going back, looking at my coaching now, I'd concentrate more on the sports psychology aspect of it now than the X's and O's.
Yeah, and Jerry, that's something that Steve and I talk about all the time is mindset. It's one of the things I teach with the business executives that I do consulting with, because mindset determines your failure or success. If you don't have the right mindset, and I'm not telling anything that's new, but that seems to be an area where I can't say all college athletic teams or high school teams or club teams, but it seems like that's a dimension that isn't focused on enough. It's all about technical, tactical, all the other areas that make up a great athlete and a great team. But that mindset is something that is just gonna, you're either gonna get it or you're not. And if you don't have that mindset correct, you're going to really struggle. As an example, it's going to be interesting to see how the Americans respond after the loss yesterday, and they got a few days to kind of regroup. And I know it wasn't the A side; it was the B side plan. But the point is, they got to get this mindset now. And so, what would you say to your club coaches, your athletes, about how we can ramp up that mindset so it's even a bigger priority, same priority as the technical, tactical, physical, and all that?
Right, and I think a lot of that goes along with your core values, right? As far as what you want, what's your club's DNA, right? What does that look like? Is mindset part of it, which it should be, right? And because having the right mindset and the right type of, and again, you're not going to hit perfect on every player, but essentially setting that environment for them to be able to succeed, right? And letting the coaches know, like, hey, here's what essentially Surf believes in, and then here's what your coach believes in that goes along with that, right? And so they have a base, but then they can work off of it, either way, because every coach is going to be a little bit different, but having that right mindset, I think goes along with it. One of the biggest pieces for me is the effort piece, right? And then being able to not only come in with the proper sleep, the proper food, the proper attitude for that matter, which does go along with the mindset piece of it, right? So I think it's all encompassed for sure, but I think obviously each coach is going to set that a little bit different. I know the club sets it a little bit different. You know we don't, what's the word here, we're not a club win first club. It's development for sure, and our coaches kind of know that piece of it as well. And because we don't put the coach's name at the very end of that team name, right? That doesn't happen at our club. And so they understand that piece, right? It's not about the coach, it's about the players. And can you and will you you know train them up, develop them to make them feel like they should be, right? And essentially create that environment, essentially with the right mindset, for sure. No, that's perfect. Perfect. I love it. What do you think, Steve?
You know me, what my mindset is, so my players follow it. So if you want it, go get it.
Yeah.
And obviously with what I do, obviously with what my wife does for a living, travel around, reinventing yourself and coming up with ideas and staying ahead of the game, is important. And same as the recruiting aspect of it, you got to stay ahead of the game. And it's like I say to my players all the time, you've got thousands and thousands of other kids that play safe and reserved. What can you offer me as a recruiter? And play out your skin, go and enjoy it, right? And what I found when I recruit, a lot of coaches play like robots and don't let the kids, play. They don't let them, just go out and play and show me what you got. I mean, I remember watching a good friend of mine's son, who's a forward. I'm like, why aren't you attacking the front post when you're a forward? You're like one of those sniffer forwards, He's always in the right place at the right time, and he pops the ball in the back of the net. He goes, Coach, don't want me to. Well, I'm looking at your recruiting that if I'm looking for a forward, I want that run, right? And being unpredictable. At the moment, you're being very predictable, and I think some coaches need to figure out that let the players express themselves a little bit, and not beat it out of them. So, but I think you find that as well yourself, Jerry, with your daughter now floating around these experienced international academies, that they allow you to play a little bit, but they put certain stipulations on not losing possession of the ball, probably the major one.
It is.
And that's what just with my advice to coaches and players, express yourself, and then let the players express themselves, because they're being recruited for that reason. No robot.
Jerry, what have you seen over the last number of years? Just maybe a different philosophy. I don't want to use the word mindset again, but with coaches in particular, club coaches specifically, are you seeing an evolution, a growth, forward growth thinking about the coaching style, the coaching philosophy? What does that look like from your perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think every club's got their own DNA, so to speak, but I think you're seeing there's better players are being made better earlier. So where it used to be a little bit later in the high school mindset, so to speak, right? Versus, 11, 12, 13, 14-year olds, right? You're starting to see that development a little bit sooner. Our club has kind of revamped what everyone has done in our area. And we started, putting a lot of time and effort and money, and whatnot into those middle age brackets. So when it does start to matter, and it all matters, but when it starts to matter, where wins do become a big thing towards the junior and senior year, right? They're already there. They got the base in, right? And the base is good. And now you just work off the base and teach them the game, in a bigger mindset, so to speak. And I'm gonna use that word, the bigger mindset, I guess, so to speak. So it's you are seeing clubs that used to be win only clubs changing, and I think that's producing more players, and that essentially that's why it's so highly competitive for colleges now, right? And that's just one part of it. And then as Steve, you're now dealing with internationals, right? And the internationals are coming over, taking up scholarships left and right. And that kid that used to, hey, that's the whatever, that's the 21st, 22nd spot on a roster, and I'm a freshman, and I'm having to essentially fight an international player for that spot now. Where before you never used to see that, right? You would see occasionally 1, 2, 3, and now you're seeing 5 and 6. And those players come out of those academies, and as my daughter found out, those academies are incredible. Man, literally, it makes you such a better player if you love the game, and you really, really, really want to put the effort to get to that next level. Those you can't go back. They've been doing it for so many years, and you can tell, and you can just see the difference of a player going over there, coming back and bringing that over here. So, but yeah, you are seeing those coaches, instead of being win only, you still got clubs like that. And we all know who they are, especially on the West Coast. Not any of the Hawaii ones for sure, right, Steve? but but Steve knows, right? The one thing I do, and I wanted to kind of mention this a little bit. When you do, I have 3 Hawaiian players guest playing with me in about 2 hours, and all 3 of them, they bring it again. They have that mindset of this is the way for me to get off the island, right? And so for them, they just play so hard, right? And so appreciative, and of just having the opportunity to do that. And again, it's one of those things, whether that be their coach, whether that be whoever, the club, they're just willing to just outwork everybody, which is what I always loved about Hawaiian players.
Our 2016 girls just attended the Surf Cup there.
There you go. Yeah. How they do?
I think they won it.
I believe it. Totally believe it. So
You have here on Oahu in Hawaii, there is I always tell my friends this because we've been here for 15 years now. So I never consider myself local, but I'm what you call kama'aina, right? That's how I moved here from the mainland. So I'm not local, but my point is, this really isn't the United States. I mean, it is, but it's a whole different culture. It's a whole different mindset out here. And when I go out and I watch, the various leagues play, whether it be high school or clubs, whatever it is, in any sport, there's something about the kids out here that the Asian influence, I'm not sure, but they play with so much heart. Maybe not every kid, but there's something about this collective mindset, society and culture out here that is really, really special. The tough part for the kids here, from what I've learned and what I've seen and talking to parents, um, you can tend to look at yourself not in a selfish way, but you're kind of a big fish in a small pond out here, right? And then going to the mainland, some folks out here in Hawaii don't go past California and certainly not past Las Vegas, right? And so the mainland's kind of a scary thing. Like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I'm prepared for that. But obviously football is not that way because football is king out here, and there's tremendous football players that go play in the big schools every year. But the typical athlete, good. Some of them just want to stay in the nice comfort of Hawaii because it is comfortable and it's a culture. So, Steve, you've been here a while now, a year. What have you seen some of that, and how are you teaching and coaching your players to kind of look beyond this if they want to pursue it going to the mainland?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I found was they're very respectful and appreciative of what they're doing. Where I think mainland players take it for granted sometimes what they're playing. I mean, from Florida originally, where you got that nice Bermuda grass and whatever else, and even in Washington State when I was there a short time, I mean, with the weather there, I mean, it blew my mind when I first saw them put their bags in the trash bag, tie it up, and run on the field, and it's 35 degrees, so the bags don't get wet. It's a certain mind. Again, go back to that word mindset, but it's what you go after, and the hunger for it. And I think the Hawaiian players are really hungry for it, and it's like anything. I mean, you look at the top athletes in football, basketball, baseball. It's a way to get out of the situation they're in. And I think the Hawaiians have the same thing. It's a way of getting off the island, and they're going to take every opportunity and chance to do it. And the investment the parents put into the player here is outstanding because, I mean, it's $1,000 to get anywhere off the island. That's without hotels and whatever else. So again, I think it comes down to a lot of respect. And then the hunger comes right behind it,
Yeah, and I think, and maybe address that, Jerry. The key word that Steve used that I failed to mention, there is a tremendous level of respect by and large, from person to person out here. It's a huge melting pot of people from all around the world, but there's this, you just don't have the same. In most cases, you don't have the same agitation and disrespect like can be portrayed on the mainland. Here, there's just respect, no matter whether you're red, yellow, black, white. Everybody just has a mutual respect for each other. What are your thoughts on that as compared to what I'm saying as compared to the mainland?
Yeah, I mean, again, you just get those players, and I've had throughout, gosh, probably the last half decade, I've had more than a handful of Hawaiians play for different teams that I've coached. I coached a Surf Select national team, and I was in at Surf Cup, and we were in the top division, and we ended up winning it. Well, two of them were Hawaii, two of them from Puerto Rico, right? And uh, Steve, do I dare tell you they were incredible players? I mean, the gems, absolutely gems. But even after the game, right? They shook everyone's hand, whether they won or didn't win, right? It was they shook everyone's hand. They shook the other player's hand. There wasn't any, but they just play hard. I mean, they just absolutely play hard. They play with that heart. And again, hard to teach it here because I think everything's so accessible. I think in the and again, I haven't been to Hawaii before, so I hopefully do at some point. But I don't know why they are so. For those of us that do know Hawaiian players, if I'm a college coach, I'm recruiting them, right? Because they're just going to outplay people, right? And it is what it is. It's just not to say that they're better. They just outwork and outplay players, and the ones that I've seen over here in the college piece, and they're scattered everywhere up here in the Northwest, in Oregon and in Washington, and a few over in Idaho for sure. But they're just better, man. They're fun to be around. They're always excited about playing, and I think similar to when you meet someone from England, right? Same thing. You get an academy kid that comes from England that wasn't going to get that pro contract, but they come over here and they just seem so happy about playing the game for 4 more years out of college, right? And they're so good at it too. And hard. It's hard to pinpoint it what it is. But I mean, obviously they're super well appreciative of everything that you give them and those opportunities. The three kids that are playing with me, probably the most conversation I've had with players that aren't on my team, that they just want to know about every little detail. They wanted to know like what colleges are going to be up at this showcase event we're playing up here in Seattle, and then how do we get in front of them? And again. Do you normally get that here? Not necessarily. But again, these are kids that we don't know that are guest playing with us that are excited about coming. So yeah, it's awesome. It's fantastic.
Interesting. One of the epitome of what kind of we're talking about, is looking at the Japanese fans and even the Japanese players in the World Cup right now. And I don't know if you guys saw it, but big news story. Talking about the Japanese fans after the ball games. They're carrying their plastic bags and they're picking up all the trash around where they were sitting so that they didn't leave a mess. And the same thing for the Japanese players. Again, Steve, that's kind of the mindset that I see here. Not that Hawaii is a perfect world, but you still see that similar mindset, not just in the Japanese population here, but throughout all the different ethnic groups. Is something about that up here that's just a little bit different than it is anywhere else I've ever lived. Steve, you're seeing that, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, we see a lot. It's more family orientated here. I mean, I believe they all sit around the table, have dinner together. And it's not just the mom and dad; it's the grandparents and grandkids and everybody, And like I say, it's respect. I think going back to what Jerry said with the internationals coming over here, it's the passion for the game, right? They have that passion, and you're not going to beat me type of attitude. But again, I think sometimes with our players in the US, they get given a lot too quickly and they don't earn it, And I think a lot of the mentality here, they believe they got to earn it, and even though I think the parents ask a little bit more of the individual here, right, than what normally happens on the mainland. I mean, like one of the kids showed up with $300 cleats the other day, and everybody asked him why he's got $300 cleats. And that was his teammates. I mean, we obviously looked at it, but we didn't say anything. But their teammates asked him why do you have to spend $300 on cleats? Does it make you shoot better, make you run faster? So again, they're down to earth.
That's interesting. Let me pivot here real quick, Jerry. From your perspective, what are you hearing within not only the club coaches, but the club players within your club as well as others? What are the athletes, the players, male, female? What are the conversations that you're hearing from these current generation about NIL or the portal? Are these conversations that kids want addressed and parents want addressed, and how are you guys addressing those kind of conversations?
Yeah, so the NIL, obviously, because of where we're at in our state, right? We are, like I said, super close to Canada. So for us, we have, probably less than 1% that would even qualify for like a Power Five, and so we're putting on about 5 or 6 players to Division 1, legit Division 1s every year now. Typically about 4 on the girls' side and about 2 on the boys' side. So we've gotten better for sure. So we don't have those conversations in a bigger sense, so to speak, with an entire group, because we have such a small percentage in the last couple of years that have gone there. We've put a lot of players on for sure. So last year for our club, we had 52 commits, which, as far as I know, in the Northwest outside of Crossfire, it's probably one of the biggest recruiting classes that we've ever had in general. But most of the conversations we have, especially with NIL, right? I mean, it has to be that particular player that it really fits that model. And there's some we definitely, like this year we have probably, 6 additional ones, or 6 players total that are going to fit in that circle, that small circle, I guess, so to speak. And yes, we've talked to those parents, and they know what they're being highly recruited right now. And so some of them have to make a decision in the next couple of weeks, so they understand the piece of what does that look like, what does that feel like, how much money do I ask for it, and so we're giving all the tools that we have, knowing what we have available to us. Every school has NIL that has money that comes from different areas, right? And so there is a collective. I think that's what I call it, Steve. I think what they call it, similar to what they call it in the UK, right? It's a collective that a pot of money basically that they can use, and obviously, American football gets the most of it, right? And then everybody else has to, share the rest of it, I guess, so to speak, right? And so, especially with the Power Fives, that makes a big difference, right? So, if they reach out to that particular player, especially after the initial talks, then at that point we do try to help on that end of it, especially the parents for sure, as far as what that looks like. I think we've had one player that's had 2 NLI offers to come in the SEC to play soccer down there on the men's side, and he ended up taking one of them, and he's still there. So again, not a whole lot of experience on my end on that of it, but as far as navigating around what it does and what you need to do, we kind of have the questions they need to ask, I guess, so to speak. But yeah, different for sure.
What about portal?
Portal. So the portal, right? So we get a lot of it. So we have players. We probably had I think the year previous to this last year, we had 38 commits, and out of the 38 commits, we had probably 10 commits that went into the portal. They did reach back out to us to find something a little more local. Obviously, most of them missed home, and or it wasn't a good environment for them. So there's about 8 of them out of the 30. So it's still not a number you really want, because I really, again, if it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. We understand that piece of it, but then getting into the portal, if depending on what it was, right? So the portal is interesting because it is a big catch shoot, right? And with however many players I think that were left over that did not find a spot, especially on the men's side, right? You might want to think of it twice. On the women's side, you have me and Steve. We have different opportunities for them, so we can put them out on other locations if they need to be, at least for a year, to get their soccer, whatever that is, paralysis, to get better at it, and get them in an environment where they can get better from it, right? And so it's tougher. I mean, I think it's tougher on the women's side, I think, tougher on the men's side than the women's side, because there's so many women programs that you could go to. You could start at D1 and go all the way down to an NAI, right, and be the top player in the nation, right? And so a lot of more opportunities, I guess, so to speak.
Steve, what are you thinking?
I think the portal's being overused, and it goes back to, and you could be in the portal forever. I mean,
Yeah.
the first thing I would do now on a recruiting aspect is, obviously I'd go into the portal to see who's in there. But my first reason is, why are you in the portal? You don't like what the coach has said to you, or your bad grades, or so, and again, it goes back to what I said earlier. You should be doing the groundwork prior to going into school, because that's your school. A lot of them in the portal because they're not getting playing time. So it goes back to that mindset project that I'm going to go in and I'm going to deserve my spot. So again, the portal's kind of put a whole damper on attending tournaments too, to be honest with you, because to be honest, I'm only going to bring probably 3 players into my program if I'm a college coach, especially with the extension of the 5-year plan. So I can do that by picking up the phone and saying, hey, Jerry, you got a couple of players you can send out to my camp and have a look at them, or hey, Bill, have you got a couple of players to send out? And so what my criteria would be now in recruiting with the portal, I'd go into the portal, I'd go into my referrals who I trust, I would then maybe pick up the players that's already in our system from our programs. So that's 3 different ones. The 4th one would be, JUCO, reach out to some JUCO coaches. And the 5th one was maybe I'll go to a tournament to look for a diamond in the rough, So again, you've got to start early. And if you're in the portal, it's not a good sign to a point. So, I mean, it's great for an opportunity because you don't have to redshirt no more. So,
Yeah.
but
Well,
it's a tough one.
it is. Bill, I actually have, there's 3D1s in our area, and some pretty big names for sure. We have one Pac-12, one Big Sky, and then one, I guess they're Pac-12 now too. So same thing, talking to the head coaches recently, right? And they were very honest with me. Hey, we're bringing on 2 freshmen, and we're going to get everybody else is going to come from the portal. And
Mm-hmm.
or and they were very honest. They were like, hey, we like the older players. They're just easier to deal with. So
Mm-hmm.
and they're already working on 2028s, right? And these are pretty popular schools, and you know and they're just saying, yeah, we're on 2028s. We're going to get our 228s and start working on 29s. So and only bring 2 or 3 freshmen again on board. So yeah, very definitely not a whole lot.
Yeah, the dynamics have changed dramatically over these last 5 years. I can remember when all this stuff with NIL started coming out, and one of the local, I was going to say joints, one of the local establishments that I hang out at with some of my local buddies. I remember telling them. I remember telling them, it probably was 2019, 2020, and I remember saying, no, nobody when the NIL, nobody is going to be paying these college athletes to. Are you kidding me? And it was this ball was rolling. Man, was I wrong about that? I'm talking about the Power 5 schools in particular. The amount of money that is in football and basketball in particular, it's insane. I would have never guessed that there would be so much money involved where players are making tons of money. In fact, I can't remember which coach it was. It was one of the big Division I basketball coaches, but he said he was surprised when he drove into his gated community in the area he lived in, and he started noticing he had 2 or 3 of his players that had homes in his gated community now because they had enough money to buy. So it's just a whole different mindset now. That's why I was curious what parents were saying, players were saying, coaches, club coaches were saying about this whole environment, because it's so different now than it ever has been.
It is. No, I agree. Totally agree on that.
Steve, now that you're out here in Hawaii, what would you say has been one of the what is, by the way, guys, it's 3-1 still, 48 minutes into the second half. So Steve, what would you say is the biggest difference? And we may have already touched on this, but just from the players that you've been coaching out here, and then translate that into players back on the mainland, the same age, generally speaking, what from the mainland, what would you say are the biggest differences in your mind?
They're a little bit sheltered here, obviously. They're playing the same teams, same players over and over again on an island, one location. Not like where on the mainland you're like for instance, Jerry was 5 hours away from me where we had to go and play a game in Spokane. So you play 2 games, so you're not going to travel 10 hours round trip for one game. But I mean, the understanding what's out there, right? They don't really understand it. I mean, we took a team to Vegas this year and we did well. We played against all the ECNL teams and we lost in the semifinals 2-1. But so they realize now the program we're putting in about how travel and understanding what's out there is important. So now how can you pit yourself against what's out there? You, like you say, you could be a big fish in a small pond here, but you're a small fish in a big pond out there. So I think that's the difference. But I mean, we got some good players out here, and tactically, the understanding about their individual positional principles we're lacking a little bit because, they can run, they fit, they move around, but understanding tactically what's expected from them in certain systems and positions was lacking, which we changed. So I mean, I'm enjoying it here. The respect is unreal.
The mindset out here too, Jerry, is if you're going to get recruited, the college coaches aren't going to come out here to Hawaii to recruit significantly, especially in sports, like soccer. They're here, but just not significant like you have on the mainland. So the kids have got to go there. Football out here is totally different. There's a school up on the North Shore called Kahuku High School. You got St. Louis High School as well. That's sent many players to big time schools. So you have a handful of really powerful football programs on any given Friday night, Friday afternoon, Saturday afternoon. You go up to those football games. You've got Power Five conference coaches out the wazoo, especially up at Kahuku, because they got these big old huge interior linemen, Samoan guys that are ready for the NFL. But it's just not that way for the soccer community, and so the kids have got to go to the mainland to be seen by and large. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. That totally makes sense. And I think we're Northwest, right? We train outside. What do you think, Steve? 9 months out of the year, and then you have to go indoors, or you suffer through the 30-degree weather that Steve was talking about. It's a different environment. I think the advantage and disadvantage, right? So the advantage for players that come out of California, come out of Hawaii, warm weather states, right? They can play 11, 12 months out of the year outside, right? And you have multiple leagues you can play in, that offer that, right? And here you literally have your seasons, and then everybody knows that once the weather goes bad, you have to go indoors, or you modify your schedule to make it work, and it's tough. It really, really is tough, as far as getting from point A to point B, and then just not having those opportunities, right? As well. But I think that's the hardest piece. I think that's the hardest piece is that, only allowing to be, 8, 9 months out of the year where the weather's super good, and the leagues do take a little hiatus in January and February because we don't have a choice. Back into December, so to speak, January, a little bit of February, and then we're back at it. But it's still tough, right? It's still tough, and not everybody in my neck of the woods where Steve knows where we're at. We have to clear snow off, right, and play 30-degree weather. So you got a little bit of everything over there for sure.
What have you seen, Jerry, so far as um, parents today as compared to 10, 15, 20 years ago? We could all share great stories. We also could all of us could share horror stories. But what are you seeing about how parents are maybe a little different in terms of their student athlete as compared to a decade ago?
Yeah. So what we have, and again, we can see it because we see it almost every week, but we have parents that actually played some type of sport, whether it be D1, D2, NAI, where we're having a lot more parents instead of that parent that was probably like my dad, where, he didn't play sports in college, right? And so, but we're seeing a lot of parents that have kids that are, bigger, stronger, faster, right? And they're more knowledgeable about how to get from point A to point B. So, essentially, the expectations probably up a little bit higher than what they think it should be in some cases, for sure. But I think if you communicate well with them, I think it all goes back to communication, right? Piece of it. And I think if you're club, if you're honest and you talk to them about what you're actually doing with your club and what the club actually offers, I think that's pretty good. But the communication, it goes back to communication, right? And then again, having those parents that have played, and we have a lot of them now, especially in these last, I would probably say the last 4 years after COVID, we've had a ton of them, and not just a few, but a bunch, both on the men's and the women's side, and we have 6 locations, and in all 6 locations, we're seeing it where their parents did play, and they're educated parents and that type of deal. I don't know, Steve, did it make them softer? Hard to say, but the parents are definitely more knowledgeable now than they were before in the last couple of years.
What are your thoughts, Steve?
Yeah, I mean, parents have done the homework now. can't pull wool over their eyes, and like Jerry said, as a club, you gotta communicate, make sure your processes and policies are in order and check, especially with travel these days, because you're taking a minor on a plane ride now and not a road trip, and responsibilities and stuff like that. It's a lot. Uh, and again, go back to the pay to play model. The parents are investing money and expect the kids to play. So most clubs carry a big roster. I mean, I only carry 15 on a roster because I want playing time, and it's not fair for the player sitting on the bench and only plays 10 minutes a game. It's, because the game's still got to be fun for the player. So.
Jerry, what touch base with what Steve just said there, with maybe a parent that through the years that is questioning, why is it little Billy playing more, and I'm paying money for him to play.
Yeah, I mean, we and again, we're in a different environment, right? We have, our senior teams keep about, junior and senior teams keep about 20 to 22 players. Our middle teams, similar to what Steve does, they keep between 15 and 16 players, right? And so that pay to play model is obviously not good. It's just hard to get around it because the leagues cost so much, the referees and the fields astronomically up here has changed our what we can charge or what we have to charge just to hit our base, right? So I think
and referee fees too.
yeah, oh yeah, referee fees, and the registers fees as well, right? So I think if you have your stuff lined out as far as what that player's actually getting for your program, right? And the biggest part is being developed, right? As a soccer player, as a football player, and then develop them as a person as well, right? And so again, I think that good communication is the piece to that. Um, whether we like the pay or pay model, we're in it, right? And the parents. They do complain? Yeah, I mean, you definitely hear some complaints for sure, and you definitely have to deal with it. But then they also have read everything that you put out. We have for us, we have a player code of conduct and we have a parent code of conduct, and it does very specifically outlines in there what your player is paying for, what they're getting from the coach. And each team obviously is a little bit different because of their junior senior levels, and then just the things that they're involved in, right? And the reason why you have to keep those additional players. Do you want to? No, not at all. I mean, I think it's 15, 16 players is perfect. I think it's easier to get playing time, and parents won't freak out as much, right? But even then, we have coaches. It's still in our day. We still got a few left, that believe that old "I'm not going to sub" mindset, and you still get them, but you still work with them and you try to make them understand, a little bit about as far as what your communication needs to be with your particular parent group, so they don't be upset, I guess, so to speak. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So as we start to tie this up, Steve, looking back on the conversation for the last 70 some minutes, what would you say to a parent, to a coach, to an athlete that may be viewing this podcast later? What would be some wisdom you might share with them, just based on everything 360 we've been talking about, mindset and otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is with tryouts, as we all know, you got parents that jump clubs just because they didn't like something, and you got club hoppers and here and there. I mean, do research into the coach. What has the coach done? What can the coach do for my son or daughter? How can that coach develop my player for one? How can that coach push me to the next level, with introductions? And again, do the research. I mean, they do the research in playing time and everything else, but they don't really do a lot of research into the coach and the organization and what's the history of that individual. And again, soccer's a big business here in the US. Don't get me wrong, it's my business, and it's Jerry's business, but be honest. I mean, if I feel as if a player shouldn't be on that roster, I don't put them on the roster, and I give the parents the reasons why. Don't hide from the situation. As a coach, don't just go, okay, I'm going to have 18 on the roster because that's my budget for the season. Because it's going to come and bite you in the ass, because that poor player, when the game's on the line, ain't going to get in the game. And what's the policy of that coach at the meetings, the coaches meeting, and to me, I'm a big believer in it as a coach as well, getting to know the parents, that you can have those conversations with and you don't hide, and I think, that's where the friendship with Jerry and I go back a long way, because the initial introduction to me, I mean, it was as a parent, really. I think the first introduction where Jerry was to me, and then it became a bit of business interaction between, being on the board of the state, and then now what he does with surf. So just be honest, tell it the way it is.
Jerry, you want to add on that?
Yeah, I'm going to piggyback with that. I think Steve has hit it right on the nose. I think it's your communication. I think in all levels of your club, you must have. I think communication with the coaches, parents, your directors. I think in all aspects. Because I think if you are selling your club, or if your parent is thinking about this club or that club, right? You got to show them what you're standing for, right? Will that fit the same thing that they want to do for their player? And then the other piece of it, and just kind of tack onto this, right, is does that particular club offer those opportunities and experiences, right? And that's a big piece of it. That's a big selling point for us, because if they can't, then is it the right club for you, right? And or does that club have the capability of doing that, right? In a lot of cases, and with myself and obviously with Steve, and just having those well-rounded circles of what we do in the soccer industry has helped tremendously, because we know we've helped a lot of kids along the way all over the country, get that opportunity, right? So essentially going back to, what we were talking about, the parents, right? The biggest part, the parents are key, the pay to pay model. Yes. Whether we like it or not, we're in it. But, allow them to know why you have to charge what you have to charge, the communication piece, and then just reiterate your standards, right? Reiterate your standards, and kind of go from there. On the player side, you know, having the right mindset. I'm going to go back. I'm going to be using that word for about the next week here now, Bill. So having the right mindset, I think, is huge, right? I think it fits a lot of stuff, right? And I think that, having the right mindset with the coach, having the right mindset as a player, with parents, with your directors, with your executives, everything along that line is huge, right? And again, when you do bring a positive environment, similar to like what Steve and I do, right? The people are attracted to that, and and because of it, right? It makes things a little, I wouldn't say super easy, Steve, right? But a lot easier for sure. And again, being able to talk, frankly and honestly with whoever, about what you do and how you do it, and why you do it, right? Is huge, right? And stuff. But no, that's perfect. I love that word, and I think that's a great way to take my next week on.
Yeah. The majority of time with my business associates and the executives I work with, and just people in general, I spend more time these days, these last few years, talking about mindset. Mindset comes from your belief system, by and large. What is the belief system? That's tied into the stories that you've told yourself and that you were told when you were a little kid, and those belief systems and those values are all built in here. That drives that mindset one way or the other. And if you have that right belief system and a stable mindset, no matter what life comes at you with, you're going to be able to adapt and improvise and overcome much easier, as opposed to if you have weak mindset or a negative mindset. And so that's something that I think that I would like to see more and more clubs and coaches and at all levels emphasize, instead of just the physical, just the technical, just the tactical. Don't make it all about the mindset and all about the belief system, but man, that should be a huge, huge part of what we're doing. And Steve, you've done a great job with that with your Hawaii team here. Jerry, what Steve has done in his brief time out here, you can't go anywhere in the soccer community, and I rub shoulders with people in the soccer community, it seems like every day. Everybody knows this guy. This has a funny accent, this new guy on the island. And so the teams that he's put together have gotten a lot of notice around the state, and they're about to get noticed even more on the mainland. And so he's building some powerhouses out here. And I'm sure, Jerry, you're not surprised on that.
I'm not surprised at all. I've known Steve for so long, and again, personally with my daughter, but then also outside of that, I've seen him build programs. I've seen him build, teams throughout the country, not just in one location. So he's got a standard, he's got a history, and he knows the game, which is fantastic.
It was funny. I was hanging out over this last couple of weeks, obviously watching a lot of the World Cup games at some of my establishments that I visit. And Steve, I didn't tell you this, but I didn't even know this guy, but we were sitting at the bar and they're just talking about youth soccer. And this one dad just said that, his 16-year-old kid plays on one of the good programs out here. But so I said, well, how was your success this year? And he said, well, we've done okay. But he said, there's this new guy over at the Honolulu Bulls, and he just kicked our ass this year. And he said, so we've had to rethink everything we're doing because we can't let those Bulls get ahead of us. And I didn't even mention that I knew you. I just like, oh, that's interesting. Is he local? No, he's got this accent, from Australia or somewhere.
It's crazy as well. I've been out here for 30 some odd years and it won't go away.
Yeah. Right.
That's good.
Well, I tell you what, it's been a great conversation, Jerry. It's been an honor and a privilege to learn about you and all your successes. I'm fortunate enough to have Steve rub off on me a little bit with all his wisdom and his experience, and I know that you took advantage of that. And he was bragging on me about you as well. So thank you so much for sharing some time with us.
Okay, I appreciate the opportunity to be on your cast and stuff, and again, I love the statement on that, raise, keeping the standards and raising the standards. I love it. And again, you take something new from everything you do, and the mindset's going to be the word for this week.
That sounds good. And I'll send you a couple of the manuscripts I've put together, Jerry. There can be lengthy, but there's about mindset, those kind of things. I'll send them to you, and then I'm not looking for any feedback. Just see if you can glean some information out of that as well. Yeah.
Sounds good.
And Steve, anything you want to add before we wrap this up?
Yeah, Jerry, obviously, if I'm a club owner and everything, and I want information on surf, how would I get in touch with you?
Let's see. I can after this podcast, I can probably send you my information, Bill, and they can get a hold of you that way. Would that be the easiest way? Or Steve can give you my information.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Just a way they could get in touch and book an appointment with you so they can learn more about the product. And obviously, if I'm a DOC in Washington State, how I can get involved with your new Transform League that you got going there. That's
yes,
awesome.
There's even more news. Steve. I can't wait to tell you.
Hopefully it includes me.
It's this one's big. It has to do with Crossfire. So there you go.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so it's huge, but no, it's good.
Well, everybody, we appreciate you joining us today. We'll hopefully be back next Friday, which will be in early July, obviously. And we look forward to that'll be July 3rd, I think. And so we look forward to having a great conversation there too. But again, Jerry, thank you so much. Guys, hang around for a couple of seconds after we close this out. And everybody, will see you next Friday. Aloha and mahalo.
Raise the Standard Podcast.